Good morning, Speedrun Ragnarok fan. I am Neon Gray, and I need to mute my stream. And I am here to be your new host for the next couple runs. Right now, there are no new donations coming in, so if you would like to give a donation, please do so. All donations during Speedrun Ragnarok do go to Take This, which is a fantastic charity devoted to, mental health at conventions, that sort of thing. They do set up awesome AFK rooms where you can just take some time out and get your head back, which if you're at an event like that, you can definitely need. And so we have our next run coming up. That is going to be Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for the Game Gear. Going to be easy rainbow percent. And I'm here with jquestionmark, who is going to be our wonderful runner today.
Hello. Good evening. Or morning, I guess, depending on your perspective on the matter.
Yeah. Well, good morning, and yes, whenever you're ready, if there's...
Sounds good. All right. We're going to go ahead and go in 3, 2, 1, go. So, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on the Game Gear. The Game Gear is often a quickly forgotten system, which is a real shame because there are some amazing games for it, such as this one. Actually, both the Power Rangers games for it are pretty excellent. And we're already off to a bad start, so please don't mind me. So easy mode, pretty self-explanatory. The game has a handful of difficulty settings, easy, normal, hard, as is pretty normal for video games. Rainbow percent is where it gets interesting. The problem with this game, as far as I'm concerned from a speedrun perspective, is there are a couple of Rangers that are objectively just really, really good. So there's not a lot of reason to ever use the other Rangers, which is a shame because all the Rangers are cool. So I have made up this fake funsies category, rainbow percent, where the additional requirement is you have to use all of the Rangers at least once, and all of the Zords at least once. So it winds up being not just a much better showcase of what's in the game, but a lot more fun to play, because you get to do a variety of things, you get to experiment around with which Rangers are best for which levels. It winds up being a lot more fun. So we're already getting pretty far into this level. We're fighting the boss, as it were. The game plays like a fighting game. So you've got your enemies who, it's side on, it's only ever you versus one enemy at a time. But each stage kind of plays out a little bit more like a brawler. So you start out fighting a bunch of putty patrols and work your way up to the main monster that you're tackling for that stage. So here we're fighting King Sphinx, and we're starting with the Pink Ranger, who her moveset honestly is really awesome, but her damage is very, very low. So we start with her early to get her out of the way when the enemies are easier and go down a lot quicker. And then we transition to the Megazord. So each stage we're going to see is going to kind of start out with this, start small, fight the monster, get big, fight the monster again, move on to the next stage. So right now we only have the Megazord, and I apologize because this Game Gear might not be synonymous with really great graphics for folks, but the color palette's pretty broad. You wind up with some really beautiful looking sprites in this game, and there are some really wonderful looking cutscenes that we're not going to get to see because it's a speedrun. I'm going to be mashing start. So I haven't even talked about how the game plays yet at this point. The way things work, generally speaking, is the Game Gear has start, which is used for pausing, and 2 buttons, 1 and 2. The game sort of approximates having 3 buttons by having you press 1 and 2 at the same time. So 1 is your punch, which I'm not going to do just yet. 2 is your kick, and 1 and 2 at the same time is some sort of special move, which tends to be a lot higher damage and just generally a much better idea than just punching or kicking. It's very rare that just punching or kicking is great. So right now, I'm grinding my way through a whole series of putty patrols that jump right into my punches, so... Well, usually jump right into punches. So punches do the trick, as is. Don't need anything fancy to deal with them. The game really, as a speedrun, comes down to memorizing what moves are best for what putties or enemies, where enemies are going to come in from. Sorry, losing my voice here apparently. And then just executing things at the right time, reacting to the AI. It makes it a fun speedrun, because you never know for sure if what you're doing is going to work, or if they're going to block, or what's going to happen. So there's a lot of reacting to things. You get a lot of variety in what's going on. So we've gone through the first couple stages. We used Trini on the second stage, just like we use Kimberly the Pink Ranger on the first stage, because her damage is relatively low and her moveset's a little weird, so we want to get through using her as quickly as possible. So now we're on to the Megazord again, and we're in luck in that the Nasty Knight's giving us some good AI right now, which means we're probably going to get some really rough AI later down the line. The game kind of goes through a cycle of AI, so you wind up with very difficult fights, usually back-to-back, and then easier fights after those or before those. It's a little odd, but you get used to it and start reacting to it. So now we're on to the Evil Green Ranger. Here I use Jason, who has a pretty short range, but a decent moveset, because we want to be able to get through the Green Ranger quickly. He can be a bit tricky, since he moves and fights a lot like us, and honestly the putties in his stage can get pretty annoying. The ones that run in particular, tend to be pretty rough. They like to block a lot, so even though they have very little health, if you get unlucky, they can keep blocking all day. They are more than happy to do so. But it looks like we're getting pretty lucky here. Again, the better things go earlier, the more I'm scared of how it's going to go later. So, Power Rangers, for those who aren't familiar with it, is an American adaptation. I'm hesitant to say localization, because it's a bit more than that, of a Japanese series called Super Sentai. Super Sentai is really cool. It started out in 1975, and ran for a few years. The first series ran particularly long, and the second series was relatively short. Took a year off, which we're going to talk a little more about later, and then came back, no longer as just Sentai, but as Super Sentai. And the name sort of directly corresponds to Power Rangers. You've got Super Power Sentai, which is like a team or task force, and then Rangers. So here we're getting big again. We're going to fight Goldar and the Green Ranger. This fight tends to go a little rough. The AI on the Green Ranger can be pretty vicious and defensive. He actually has access to a move that, once he joins your team, spoilers, the Green Ranger joins your team, for anyone who was not already aware. Once he joins your team, you cannot execute, but it hits hard. That's the one right there. Even if you block it, the final move hits you, because it comes from the ground, which is just the worst. So, since we're big again, and we're just working our way through the Green Ranger, we're going to talk about Spider-Man. And you might be wondering, why am I going to talk about Spider-Man? Well, the reason I'm fighting the Giant Zord is because of Spider-Man. If not for Spider-Man, you would not be seeing this fight right now. In 1978, Bandai and Toei took a break from doing Sentai because they had a contract with Marvel. And we're going to go Zach on this one. So with this contract with Marvel, they decided they were going to do a Spider-Man series. So right here, this is the one stage that breaks the mold in the game, where we start out huge and then get small after the fact. Mainly for story reasons, so it matches what happens in the show. So, Spider-Man was a very successful series, and part of what made him so successful was having a giant robot named Leopardon. Leopardon was cool. He was a giant robot, he could transform. Everybody loved it. Man, this Dragon's Sword fight is going rough. So, when they brought back Sentai, it became super by virtue of the fact that they gave them giant robots, which in the US version are called Zords. So, the series after that became Super Sentai and remained Super Sentai all the way up until it still is. It's still running. So 1992, Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger came out, which is what the stock footage that was used for the fight scenes came over to the US as Power Rangers. So this is where it all starts. The series was really cool. Yeah, honestly, not just the critters, but a lot of the monsters were reused. Yeah, only took 25 plus years to get a good Power Rangers game. I mean, to be fair, there actually weren't a whole lot of Sentai games. The Power Rangers series saw a lot of games a lot earlier than Sentai did. So, why? I don't know, because Sentai was definitely very popular. You'd think they'd want to capitalize on that, but here we are, playing a game that was made specifically because of Power Rangers and not adapted from a Japanese game for Super Sentai. So yeah, now we have the Green Ranger. We want to use the Green Ranger right away, partly just because he's good, and we want to save the Blue Ranger and the one Ranger that we get to reuse on Stage 7 for something else. So, oh my goodness, putties, please stop. Yeah, Super Sentai was a whole thing. It's really cool. The history of it's great. Looking at how a lot of the stuff overlaps, especially in the first few seasons of Power Rangers, is particularly wild. I find it really fascinating. Ooh. Oh, thank you for the good luck charm. Oh no, that's not where that worked out. So, yeah, again, the whole game is very much about memorizing where putties come in, how to react to them so you can get them out right away, and then how best to execute your moves to fight the boss, or boss monster, whatever you want to consider it. So, here we're fighting Shell Shocker. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this was actually the monster that Tommy fought in the show. Could be wrong on that. It's been a little while since I've watched it. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Fighting Edition was interesting. All of the Genesis ones were fighting. So, SNES got a fighting one. So here we're using the Dragonzord. You might think, oh man, this sword looks so cool. Why are we not using it on the final boss? I actually find this sword incredibly hard to use. The Dragon Sword works out really well against the next enemy. Jeez. But because the special on this one, the 3-button, is a 1-2 hit, I find it a lot harder to land. I don't know, it's probably just me. We're doing so bad here. I am at slight risk of dying to this boss, and that would just be very sad, because this boss is really not so hard. Or at least shouldn't be. Again, I find this sword really hard to use. I don't know what the deal is. He looks amazing, but I just find fighting with him is an utter mess. There we go. Finally get in some proper damage. And hopefully, nope, not enough to wrap it up. Thanks, buddy. So, yeah, the whole game honestly plays really well. It emulates beautifully, so highly recommend checking it out. Or if you have a Game Gear, by all means, check it out on actual hardware. It plays great. So, we're honestly coming up towards the end. Last couple of stages here, Poluticorn, and then the final stage. Poluticorn's weird. So I mentioned earlier that we use Trini and Kimberly early because their damage is low and their movesets are bad. That goes honestly doubly for Billy. I find him hard to use anywhere, but he's cool. He fought Pluticorn in the show, so we're giving him a chance to, follow up on how he did it in the actual episode. And his high mobility special, that one, which of course the enemy blocks as I'm trying to explain why it's cool, works really well against Pluticorn. Pluticorn has some moves that move him all over the screen. Yeah, I try to keep my Rangers-related lore up to date so that I can deliver cool info about it. Let's run right into that. Was not expecting him from that side. That I should have seen coming. Okay. So, whoa, our health is getting a little lower than I'd like. One of the nice things is the game will refill your health a bit after each enemy is defeated. So health getting low is not a very, very serious concern. So this could go any which way. Pluticorn can be all over the place. Sometimes he's nice, sometimes he's not. We're off to an okay start, but that doesn't really mean anything. So, I'm struggling here to think of other cool things to talk about Power Rangers. Oh, you know what? We're on Billy's stage. We should talk about one of my favorite episodes of Kyoryu's Sentai Z Rangers. So, in Power Rangers, there's an episode where Rita's minions get Billy and Kimberly with some red goo that turns them into punks. Now, when I say punks, I mean it's just ridiculous and harmless. They're wearing jean jackets and leather jackets, and Kimberly makes out with either Bulk or Skull. I can't remember which one. It's all pretty silly. In the Japanese version, the same thing happens. There's a red potion. It affects the blue and pink Rangers, and they turn into punks. And when I say punks, I mean they get involved in organized crime and decide to bust up a drug ring by busting in with weapons, including a Tommy gun, and mowing down all of the people involved. So slightly different level of punks. It gets pretty metal by comparison. We use Megazord on Pluticorn because his drop kick weirdly takes priority over Pluticorn's across the screen attack and is great for catching him as he comes in towards you. I don't know. Megazord's a tough one to use. I wouldn't want to use it on the final boss for sure. Yeah, definitely for kids. Certainly a appropriate for children show. So, we've taken out Pluticorn, we move on to the final stage, which is less of a Power Rangers thing, and more of a, in the fine tradition of video games, it's time for some palette swaps. Don't get me wrong, Goldar being the main enemy, spoilers, it's Goldar, and Cyclosis being the final boss of this is definitely in keeping with this first season of Power Rangers, but having these palette swapped enemies is not, as far as I recall correctly, something that happened in the show. I think they might have brought them back. It's been a while since I've watched it. You'd think for all the random Power Rangers facts I have, I would know which way the season ended, but it's been a minute. I should probably fix that. So here we are, fighting our way through these enemies. They are a little smarter. Mainly they're just blocking a lot, which is really not a whole lot can be done about that. It can be very hard to open up enemies in this. Ooh, we're stunned. This is bad. There we go. So Zach is the one I prefer to use when doing quote-unquote proper speedruns. His 1-2 kick means you have a chance of the enemy no longer blocking, which is, of course, ideal, because then you get to do at least a little bit of damage. It causes knockdown. It's great. Alright, so we're up against Goldar. We just gotta not get completely destroyed. Goldar on this stage tends to not be super bad. Yeah, Cyclops, I want to say, was the final thing they fought at the end of the first season, so it makes sense that it would show up as the boss in a lot of stuff. Alright. Yeah, gosh, that move is just so good. The sequel to this, the movie game, honestly, I think isn't quite as fun. You don't have as much choice with your Zords. You just kind of play through it. It's shorter. Oh, we want to use the regular Megazord. And there is an even more overpowered Ranger available for your use. This is going great. So yeah, this final boss can be utterly brutal. There's a good chance I'm going to die at this rate. There we go. Starting to open them up a bit. Time is coming up potentially soon, assuming I don't get destroyed here, which is also a great possibility. But time is on final hit of this boss, which will hopefully be coming up in just a moment. Boop, and time. So, that is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on the Game Gear. It is an incredibly fun game. The boards for it aren't super active these days, but I would really love to see some more people getting out and playing it. It's a blast. Please come play. Thank you for the GGs. They are much appreciated. And here at the end we get to see a little bit of the, honestly, I think, especially considering the hardware of the Game Gear, really good looking cutscenes going through the story at the end.
Hey, jquestionmark. That was a really cool run. Never actually seen this game before, so it is really something.
It's a blast. It's a lot of fun to play. Honestly, I play it just to wind down sometimes. It's a nice, chill run. There's no lives or anything, so if you do run into a death, it's very easy to just pick back up from where you were. I actually, when I was practicing for this the other night, I had two deaths on the final boss because I had selected the wrong Zord at one point and was stuck using the Dragon Zord F on the final boss, and I still came in under estimate, so it's chill, it's fun. Really, more people should play this. Please come play this game and talk to me about it. I'm so lonely.
Well, you heard him. Go and don't let him be lonely, because nobody should be lonely.
And I guess I just want to say thank you so much for having me here in the marathon. I'll be doing a couple more runs in a couple days, but for anyone watching who hasn't donated yet, take this as an awesome cause, and this is an awesome marathon, so now is a very, very good time to go get some donations in. Please do that.
Yes, again, Take This is a charity that it's a mental health nonprofit, and their main mission is to inform the gaming community about mental health issues, provide education on different disorders and prevention techniques, and reduce the overall stigma around mental illness. They are a great organization, and if you do want more information, you can always go see them at takethis.org.